Hello, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Westfield Center, Ohio. I am Reverend Sam E. Byrd. Happy Biodiversity Sunday. Biodiversity Sunday sits between Endangered Species Day on May 15th and the International Day for Biodiversity on May 22nd. Today's reading is from Ron Engel. He is a UU theologian who had such an important role in the drafting of the Earth Charter language. In the 1960s, living in an ethnically diverse urban neighborhood in Chicago, Ron began to develop his theories on the relationship between spirit and the environment. He writes of his early efforts to work with others to transform his neighborhood into a healthy and thriving metropolitan regional community. Each one of the 8 forms of engagement that we will discuss here today were alive there 40 years ago, casting its radiance over many lives. He says it meant everything to us that we personally lived as members of this neighborhood, citizens of this little urban bioregion, that we took this whole community as our parish and called our community organization the Neighborhood Commons. Even in this biologically impoverished landscape, the natural ecosystem was important to us, and I vividly recall the day we took a group of young people for a canoe ride along the North Branch of the Chicago River to help get a better sense of our turf. I also recall the day that I discovered a neighbor from Eastern Europe picking the grape leaves off the vines in our yard. The roosters that used to crow in the morning in the food co-op we sponsored, and the great community potlucks we shared. I discovered that these strangers loved gardens and a trip out of the city as much as I did. Never since that time, I have had little tolerance for the claim that the environment is only a white person or elitist issue. Our ministry was about embracing bodies, especially the bodies of children, and in the parlance of the civil rights movement, putting our bodies on the line. I could go on at some length about the resurgence of the community arts in our neighborhood and the efforts of the stewardship and sustainable co-creativity through a community development cooperation that rehabilitated and built low-income housing and which continues to prosper to this day. Now today's message. How are we to live under the conditions of life as they are given to us here and now on this planet? Ron Engel says this is the central religious question of human life. It seems pretty simple. How are we to live under the conditions of life as they are given to us here and now on this planet? The hard part, though, is this question demands answers from us. How are we to live means that we have choices to make. The rest of the question suggests that those choices make a difference both to ourselves and to the world around us. Ron Engel made several choices in the Chicago neighborhood where he lives. We have all made similar choices. We have chosen to live here in Ohio, near both people and wild places. We make decisions about what we do, how we and where we work and play, what causes we support, and what things we buy, all based on some set of criteria. These criteria, I would like to suggest, include impulses from our bodies that tell us when something feels right or wrong, good or bad. Such impulses are what I have come to think of as the human spirit. Today, I would like to talk about the human spirit, where it comes from, and what nurtures it. When I realized that this Sunday is Biodiversity Sunday, I looked at the UUA website to see what we are doing to help the environment. There are articles on climate and environmental justice, ethical eating, global warming, and green sanctuaries, to name a few. As I continued to research and read, I discovered a path that led me to the origins of the 7th principle, the UU's environmental principle, which states, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Another path led me to the reverence for life ideas, that profound, adoring, awed respect for all life on earth. A third path led me to Ron Engel. My first encounter with Ron's work came when I found an article of his on the internet, the title of which is Earth's Spirituality is a Many-Splintered Thing. This article, and a few other things that I read, has profoundly affected my ideas about the human spirit. Engel's basic idea is that the human spirit flourishes when it engages with the natural world. He says that human beings have evolved a plurality of ways of engaging spirit, nature, and one another so as to enable their mutual flourishing. The word evolve suggests that these ways or paths are innate, part of, and emerging from the long process of human evolution. Mutual flourishing means that all these things together, spirit, nature, and humans, are required for the flourishing. Engel outlines 8 different, through interrelated, ways that humans engage with nature and in doing so enable the flourishing of humans in the natural world. He says we need to be critically faithful to each of these ways separately and in interplay with each other, if we are to set our species on a just, sustainable, and spiritually fulfilling path of planetary evolution. And these 8 are: number 1, wilderness encounters. The experience of being overwhelmed and possibly transformed through experiences in wild, even hostile environments, leading to a deep and abiding identification with the evolution of all existence. Number 2, bioregional participation. The experience of belonging to an interdependent natural community or ecosystem, inclusive of human society, that is small enough to understand and maintain, yet large enough to provide for the needs of its members, leads to a sense of moral and political obligation to cooperate in maintaining the ecological integrity and species diversity of the bioregion. Number 3, embracing the body. An intimate awareness of the generative powers of our physical being, our capacity to give birth and be reborn throughout the cycles of life, leading to solidarity with all other physical beings and a concern for organic well-being and healing. Number 4, respect for the rights of individual beings. The experience of the unique individuality and intrinsic value of other beings, human and non-human, leading to a respect for their equal rights to exist and to be free to pursue a life of their own, and efforts to legally institutionalize such rights, with special concern for the equal rights of the oppressed. Number 5, compassion for the suffering of life. The experience of sympathy for the ways in which humans and other sentient beings can be violated and feel pain, leading to a benevolent concern to remove unnecessary suffering in our treatment of persons and animals, with special concern for the suffering of the weak, the abandoned, and the excluded. Number 6, tending the garden. Making a home and a livelihood through the cultivation of plants and animals, and the practice of the domestic virtues, including sowing the soil and reaping the harvest, keeping a hearth, preparing and sharing nourishing food, and nurturing a marriage or partnership and family, leading to fidelity to place and local communities, and perseverance in the ordinary, life-sustaining task of human dwelling. Stewardship, number 7. The experience of being treated fairly and having one's basic needs met in spite of scarce resources, leading one to assume responsibility for membership in a moral community that seeks the equitable, efficient, and sustainable use of the wealth of the community, including the management of its natural resources for the most persons over the longest time. And number 8, artistic co-creation. The exercise of the human capacity for co-creativity through realizing the potential of nature for new forms of perfection, and the potential of human beings for self-realization through aesthetic sensitivity and skill in the making of works of art, which leads to efforts to make all human action and production, technical skill, and kinds of work more aesthetically fulfilling for humans and the environment. It helps, I think, to hear these descriptions several times, so I would like to suggest you either write them down or come back to hear them several times. Today, though, I want to look at some of Engel's general ideas to demonstrate why they seem so important to me. Not so awfully long ago, I would have looked at this list of 8 and said, well, that's nice, and why do I need to concern myself with such ideas? I was doing my part. I gave money to environmental causes, voted Democratic, and recycled. I like to garden on my deck with planters and take walks to my pond with the dogs. I enjoy watching the frogs and fish playing in the water, the birds singing in the trees, and the dogs rolling on their backs in the grass. Did I really need to look at these things more deeply? According to Engel and other spiritual ecology writers, the ways in which we interact with the natural world reflect our most fundamental human characteristics and feed our innermost needs. Most of us know at least the rudiments of the science of evolution. Life on Earth began in the sea billions of years ago, and over time, more complex creatures evolved, crawled out of the sea, and here we are today. But as we look more closely at things like human consciousness and spirit, things are not so easy to understand. Where does that thing I refer to as my gut feeling come from? Why do certain things make me laugh or cry or feel good or not so good about myself? Do you have the same kind of feelings as I do? Do we all? Are these things simply learned behaviors, or is there something intrinsic to human beings that enable us to think and feel in the ways that we do? Well, Engel believes that there is something intrinsic, that there is something in our genetic code, inherited through the ages from the critical process of evolution, which defines and enables what we now refer to as the human spirit. And here's the important part. Having evolved from nature, this spirit requires a continuing connection with the natural world to be nurtured, to feel at home, and right with the world. This may or may not resonate with all of you. For some of us, something special happens, physically and emotionally, when we are out in nature, working in the garden, taking care of our bodies, or creating works of art. Others, though, may be less sure of such fundamental connections between spirit and nature. If you find yourself even just a little intrigued by these ideas, however, I would invite you to consider the different possible impacts our individual and collective choices may make over the coming decades. Engel and many other writers lament the loss of the ability in our modern world for people to engage with the natural world in one or more of these 8 ways. Engel writes, "We all feel these losses, I believe, even if we are too often embarrassed or inarticulate to say so, and spend much of our energies at cross purposes with ourselves perpetrating the very processes that destroy the things we love. I believe most people truly yearn to participate in these paths of earthly salvation, and many are eager to find ways to embody them more richly, more justly, and the conditions of the past have allowed. So, at a personal level, we may feel lost or disconnected if we do not make the time and space to engage with nature on a regular basis. On a societal level, we have routinely made decisions that have reduced the abilities of people to connect with nature. We have used up land and natural resources for human commerce. We have increasingly made job and lifestyle demands on people that have taken them away from the natural world. Large inequalities in income and in life's opportunities result in unequal access to nature. Even larger questions loom. Environmental author Bill McGibbon speaks about genetic engineering and its possible consequences of the future. He touched on the basis you might expect, including the fear of unintended impacts on fragile ecosystems and all of life. But then he came to the point he really wanted to make. He is concerned that we are headed into the realm of changing what it means to be a human being on this planet. If through genetic engineering we can extend human life by several times, or even indefinitely, what will that mean for our species and how we look at ourselves and the world around us? All of which brought me back to Engel's central religious question. How are we to live under the conditions of life as they are given to us here and now on this planet? The wonderful but frankly also scary thing is that each one of us must answer this question. We can help each other out along the way and in this journey, but ultimately, the choices are ours alone to make. I would like to share with you some of the choices that I have made for how I want to live. I want to see the light of the setting sun while sitting on my deck, and stand in awe of the sun and the moon and the stars and our place in the universe. I want to work in my garden of flowers and herbs this afternoon, smell the cilantro growing, and know amidst wonder that those onions I just planted will actually come up. I want a clean and safe environment for my pets and all the animals in this world. I want to leave to my children and my grandchildren and all children a good life on a healthy planet Earth. I want to be part of a community of people, a congregation, and a religious movement that encourages understanding of the basic connections between spirit and nature, and that it supports one another in our quest to make a difference in the world. I want all these things for all people. I want all people to have a profound, adoring, awed respect for life on Earth. And what I believe is that human spirits are uplifted whenever we make choices that work in these directions, and ultimately, that is what makes life worth living. Over the next several weeks, I would ask that each of us take stock of those moments when you feel really good about yourself, when your spirit has been uplifted, and consider whether you have made a connection with nature in some way. And go out there and make your connection with nature. Our closing words today: love our earth, take action to consume less, use less energy, respect water, and be cooperative, collaborative, and a creative community like the moss and the mushrooms. Our children's life depend on us.